A call came in from an unknown phone number. Who could it be? Hello? No, hello. It's your son, Kevin. Look, it's fine that you divorced Dad, but you gotta step up and take responsibility as a mom. I mean, I'm already in high school, so I can't keep getting dragged into your drama forever, you know. Huh? What are you talking about? Why are you calling me? As I started to say that, Kevin's voice grew harsh. I'm telling you, you need to pay up my child support and school fees, and you need to do it soon. It's all because of your cheating, and yet you're trying to mooch off Dad for money. You're out of your mind. His words angered me, and I replied to Kevin, who is this? I never gave birth to any children. Huh? Are you crazy or something? Or are you trying to avoid pain because you don't want to? Don't play games with me. Kevin probably thinks I'm joking. But surprisingly, I'm being serious. As I said earlier, Kevin isn't my biological son. About 14 years ago from now, I was married to my ex-husband for about 3 years at the time. Our relationship hadn't changed much until then, and I thought we got along relatively well. We often went out together on our days off. After all, my ex-husband was busy with work, and he was often away on business for about half of the month. I had heard that his sales job involved a lot of business trips even before we got married, so I didn't feel too uneasy about it. But the only thing that seemed strange to me was regarding children. Before we got married, I liked children and talked about wanting to have one soon. Of course, we both had our own plans. Even if I felt it was the right thing to do, it wouldn't work if he didn't feel the same. So I was patient and didn't rush things, but after 3 years of marriage, my ex-husband never mentioned anything about having children. Feeling strange after 3 years had passed, I brought it up. About having a child, what do you think about it now? 3 years have passed, and if we keep waiting, the risks of childbirth will only increase as we get older. No, yay. But I'm busy with work right now. When will you not be busy? Huh? You've been saying that all this time, and it's gotten us nowhere. It can't be helped if I'm busy with work. If you keep saying that, it'll start to sound suspicious whether you're really working or not. WH, what do you mean by that? I haven't done anything wrong. Huh? This exchange felt a bit strange. I didn't think my ex-husband was cheating. I just meant that if things continued like this, it would be inevitable to suspect cheating, but for some reason, my ex-husband seemed flustered. He's hiding something. With that in mind, I decided to investigate my ex-husband. And I found out the truth about his words and actions, his attitude when I questioned him back then, and what he was actually doing during his business trips. To call it cheating would be too lenient. My husband was leading a double life. Half the month with me, and the other half with another family. But what shocked me the most was that the other family had a child. That child turned out to be Kevin. You called me just now. Kevin was about 2 years old at the time, still too young to understand. It's fortunate and unfortunate at the same time. But someone is bound to get hurt, so I decided to talk to the other woman later. She seemed to have heard about me from my ex-husband, as she gave me a slight nod when she saw me. When we first met, I didn't get the impression that she was particularly friendly. Amidst the tension, we quickly got down to business. I talked about everything that concerned me, such as whether it was okay to leave things as they were with my ex-husband leading a double life, and whose child Kevin really was. But she didn't bat an eyelid and answered calmly, without a hint of remorse. And then, she confidently declared that she was Kevin's mother. Although my ex-husband seemed to be keeping it a secret, she didn't seem to be hiding anything at all as she answered, so I ended up feeling a bit pushed down. Finally, I asked her what she planned to do from now on. I'm not going to do anything. I have no intention of changing anything in my life now, and I'm fine with that. But I don't think he's going to have any more children. Why is that? When I told him about my pregnancy with Kevin, he didn't seem particularly thrilled. He said it would have been better if the timing had been different. So I just happened to get pregnant. Otherwise, I don't think he would have wanted to have a child. But he told me he liked children. Doesn't that mean he didn't want to have a child with you? She smiled slightly and said, "That's strange, isn't it? If that were the case, why did I, who didn't want a child that much, give birth, while you, who wanted a child, didn't even get pregnant? Can he really say he likes children?" Well, that's... I'm sure he said he liked children, but actually it was a lie, right? Maybe he thought saying that he liked children would make him more attractive in your eyes. Maybe he just used it as an excuse to flirt with you. I wanted to retort, but I couldn't. I felt like she had hit the nail on the head for some reason. And it seemed like my ex-husband was really thinking about children, despite not actually wanting any. Given all that, I ended up thinking that what the other woman was saying was right. All I could do was claim damages at most. She showed a relaxed expression, making me feel even more miserable about myself. A few days later, I filled out divorce papers and handed them to my husband, informing him that I would also be seeking damages. He probably heard about me from the other woman. My husband accepted the divorce papers and the damages without asking me any questions. In the end, what was the point of this man marrying me? There was only one thing that bothered me in the end. On the day I packed up and left, I asked my ex-husband why he married me. I wonder why. I'm not really sure either. I really wonder why we got married, too. If we didn't even know why we got married, we shouldn't have gotten married in the first place. Yeah, that's true. If we hadn't, you wouldn't have had to have a divorce on your record. But oh well. You chose to marry me because you liked me, right? Then we can just think of it as both of us making a wrong choice in life. Let's move on to a better life from now on. Thanks for everything up until now. Same to you. I'll pray that I don't choose someone like you in my next life. And so, we got divorced. After that, I became single and, with a fresh start in mind, changed jobs and moved to a different state. I think approaching everything with a new mindset was a very good experience for me. My ex-husband occasionally contacted me about paperwork, but we never discussed each other's current situations. Maybe he wasn't interested. He had his life, and I had my new life. But about 10 years passed without keeping in touch. I received an unexpected call from Kevin. I wondered what it could be about, but it turned out he was asking for child support and school fees. Kevin is the child born from my ex-husband's affair. Naturally, I have no obligation to pay. I tried to tell him that, but he wouldn't listen at all. Don't you feel ashamed as a mother? If that's the case, then don't have any children. It was getting on my nerves to be told the same thing over and over again. But if I got angry, he probably wouldn't listen to anything else. So I had no choice but to wait for him to calm down a bit. A few minutes later, I was finally able to broach the subject. Can I talk for a moment? There are a few things I'd like to confirm. How did you manage to get my number? It's obvious. I got it from Dad. Our family hasn't been so well off lately, and it seemed weird. Eventually, we couldn't afford it anymore. Tuition and all that. Thanks to that, I had to start working part-time. Dad said it was all your fault, so I heard various things about you, Mom. That you cheated on Dad and left him without paying anything as you had promised. Until then, I hadn't asked much about the divorce, but I finally understood everything. It was all your fault. I see. I finally understood why he was so angry. If this is true, any kid would be mad. But my ex-husband lied to Kevin, and unbelievably, he instigated Kevin. When I heard this, anger surged within me. It's a nuisance for him to come back in my life now, especially since we've already divorced. But Kevin, being deceived like this, is also pitiful. From my perspective, he's just a stranger, but I couldn't just leave him alone, saying it's not my concern. I remarried after that and now have children with my current husband. So, as a parent with children, I thought I should do the bare minimum. First, I decided to tell him the truth. He's 16 now, so it should be fine to discuss adult matters. Kevin, everything I'm about to tell you is the truth. If you want proof, I'll do a DNA test or anything else you need. Can you listen to what I have to tell you for now? Yay. I told Kevin that we're not biologically related and that I divorced his father over 10 years ago. At first, Kevin was hesitant to believe what he heard, but as I disclosed one fact after another, he gradually began to show signs of agitation. If what you're saying is true, why did Dad have me make this call? Kevin, earlier you mentioned you were working part-time, right? What are you doing with that money? Dad's holding on to it for me. High school isn't mandatory anymore, and I thought if my dad was in trouble, I should help. Plus, I don't really need a lot of money. You're such a good kid. But haven't you ever thought about it? If you have that money, why can't you pay for your tuition and expenses? Well, you know, the payment for my phone bill is sometimes late. I think he probably doesn't have enough money. Is your dad currently working? He's working. He goes to the company and everything. I see. I have a bad feeling about this. Could it be that my ex-husband is getting his hands on Kevin's money? With that thought in mind, I decided to investigate my ex-husband once more. Kevin, can you give me about 3 weeks? Yeah, that's fine. And please, keep what I told you on the phone a secret from your dad. Okay. Got it. And so, I decided to investigate my ex-husband's background. I hired a private investigator and awaited the results. Normally, going this far would be overly kind. But everything is for Kevin's sake. I don't need to go this far for someone else. Even if they say I'm crazy, I don't care. Would I abandon a child who looks like he's about to collapse right in front of me? My answer is no. I don't want to become that kind of person. And above all, I despise my ex-husband for lying to that child. Filled with anger towards my ex-husband, I waited for the investigation report from the private investigator for 3 weeks. When the results came in, I was shocked. At the same time, anger welled up inside me. Turns out, my ex-husband is currently not a full-time employee but a temporary worker. And recently, he got laid off, so now he's on leave. He's supposedly going to the unemployment office, but he doesn't seem motivated, idling away the hours drinking or playing cards. Kevin thought his dad was working because he wore a suit, but in reality, he's just looking for a job. And there's no sign of him actually looking for work. But what's despicable about my ex-husband is how he immediately acts apologetic in front of his child. So Kevin, seeing his dad like that, feels sorry for him and hands over all his part-time job earnings. However, in reality, that money was just spent on my ex-husband's gambling and drinking. There's no way I can let that slide. First, I need to do something about Kevin's situation. With that in mind, I called my ex-mother-in-law. It was lucky that I hadn't deleted her number from my phone book. Hello. Oh, Ava. What's wrong? It's been a while. Long time no see. I have something I want to talk to you about. Is now a good time? I explained the current situation to my mother-in-law. Why I called my ex-mother-in-law? For my ex-husband, his mother, and his aunt were his arch enemies. During our marriage, I didn't visit my in-laws' house often because of that. After the divorce, we hadn't been in touch at all, but apparently my mother-in-law had heard about my divorce and understood that I had other things that I wanted to do, so she wasn't angry at all. I see. I'm sorry. I didn't say anything because I thought it would be better to hear it from him, but he was cheating. As I heard that, my mother-in-law's tone dropped, and when I told her all the facts, my mother-in-law let out an angry cry over the phone. I see. It all makes sense now. I was not informed about the birth because he had a child with his affair partner. He brought Kevin over, but I was told not to contact you because you didn't want to see anyone right after giving birth. After giving birth, some people experience mental instability, and some even suffer from mental illness. So I quietly left you alone. And when I heard the reason for the divorce, I felt sorry, but I couldn't contact you. Is that so? But now, Kevin occasionally comes to visit, and it makes me happy. Even if he might be the child born out of an affair, he's not at fault, so I intend to support him as his ally in the future. As expected of you. I feel relieved. Actually, I called you to ask a favor about Kevin. Could you and father raise Kevin together? Of course. Kevin worked so hard to earn money from his part-time job for it to be used on gambling. I think I need to have a serious talk with him about that. I'll leave that to you. But I think Kevin is desperately wasting his future trying to support his father. So please, let him live without restraints with you and his grandfather. My mother-in-law assured me that she would take care of Kevin, and thus Kevin's situation was resolved. Now, it's my ex-husband's turn. I decided to contact him and meet him later. I was angry because he had lied to me. When I arrived at the cafe at the appointed time and saw my ex-husband, he looked shabby compared to before. It's rare for you to contact me. And damn, you look older. Anyway, what about Kevin? So you already know. Then let's get straight to the point. Why did you get Kevin to call me? What's your intention? I just got desperate. I've been really short on cash lately. I also got caught for fraud at my previous job and had to quit. Kevin's mother suddenly disappeared, and many things are disappearing from my sight. But my mom and Kevin still think I'm going to work. It's easy to fool them as long as I look sorry. Kevin is your son, isn't he? Don't you feel anything about that? He's a good son who gives me money. You won't find a more filial son than him. Oh, I see. But I feel relieved, since you said those things in front of them. Huh. 3 people stood up from the table behind me and came over to our table. What's going on? You're really the worst. We heard everything just now. Even at your age, your hopeless personality hasn't changed. It's all over for you. It was my mother-in-law, my aunt-in-law, and Kevin. To convince everyone, it was necessary for them to see his true nature with their own eyes. My ex-husband started to get noticeably flustered and couldn't find the right words. Being reproached by everyone, my ex-husband kept glancing at me, seeming to seek help. But even if you make that face, it won't work. Accept everything you've done and realize what a hopeless scumbag you've been. Ick. And so, this incident came to a close. Since then, my ex-husband has been criticized by my mother-in-law, aunt-in-law, and then father-in-law. He was forced to go to work. He got a job at a construction site through my FIL's connections. My Phil said he sent him off to whip him back into shape. And then, my Phil also instructed the company to deduct child support from his salary as child support. That money is now going into covering Kevin's tuition fees and other school expenses. Since then, Kevin has been living with his grandma. I'm completely fed up with my ex-husband, but apparently, he's been treating my Mill and Phil kindly now. Kevin always seems like such a kind child, no matter what. I'm still not sure if the actions I took this time were the right ones. But things have definitely improved from before. I sincerely wish for Kevin to be happy. As my Mill said, the child born into this world bears no guilt. My daughter, once cheerful and talkative, lost her smile and hardly spoke. Worried, I consulted my husband, but he angrily said, "It's just a typical teenage rebellion. Don't worry about every little thing." Suspicious, I decided to install hidden cameras to confirm the truth between my husband and daughter. On a later day, pretending to go out, I hid in the yard, took out my phone, and rushed into the house upon seeing the footage of the two, desperate to help Evelyn. My name is Lillian, 40 years old. I've been married to Tyler for 15 years. Initially, I focused on raising our daughter, Evelyn, who was born 13 years ago. However, when Evelyn started kindergarten, I returned to work, and now as a working mother, I juggle between work, household chores, and parenting. My husband works in sales for a medical equipment company. He had rejected his parents' request to take over their dairy farm, declaring that he didn't want to endure such a harsh job. Upon graduation, he moved out of his parents' house. His strict upbringing from his diligent parents led him to be tough on our daughter, Evelyn. "Hey Evelyn, it's already 6 p.m. Isn't it late for you to come home? If you're going to be late, at least give us a call." "Ugh, you're so annoying." Evelyn covered her ears and grumbled about my husband's nagging. "Your dad is just worried about you, Evelyn. He's been a doting parent since forever." Being a doting parent is so creepy. What's creepy about it? Okay, I got it. The two often quarreled this way, and it was my role to mediate. Since entering middle school, Evelyn had been complaining more about my husband's nagging, but I felt happy that she could express her opinions without reservation. Despite their arguments, I found their parent-child fights endearing, and at that time, I believed we were just a normal, close-knit family. One day on my day off, I was preparing to go to the gym where my father served as a self-defense instructor. Since I started working, I didn't get a chance to exercise much, so I started going back to the gym to stay active. Despite inviting Evelyn and my husband each time, they always declined, saying it's been much of a hassle. "I'm tired, so I'm going to relax at home." Every time they would decline, so each time I reluctantly headed out alone. "I'll be back before dinner." "No fighting, okay?" "I got it. Have a good time." I left for the gym, being sent off by Evelyn's amused smile. Evelyn has an innocent personality, often laughing and talking. She is like the sunshine of our home. Even when things were tough, she is my irreplaceable treasure, so her smile could make everything better. Little did I imagine that her smile would be lost. Yeah, I'm home. Returning exhausted from the gym, I entered the living room to find only my husband. Where's Evelyn? In her room, I guess. I questioned my husband's words. She always sat in front of the TV in the living room around this time because the TV show she always watches is on. Evelyn, your usual show is starting. I called while knocking on Evelyn's room door, thinking she might be asleep. After a few seconds, the door opened slowly. Sorry, I was sleeping, she said, laughing, but I sensed something was wrong. It seemed like she was forcing herself to laugh. What's wrong? Is something bothering you? What? Oh, I have to hurry or the show will end. Rushing to the living room to avoid me, watching Evelyn's back made my chest feel uneasy. Even though she was so lively in the morning, something was clearly wrong. I headed to the living room, and after Evelyn went to bed, I discreetly asked my husband, "Hey, Evelyn doesn't seem well, right? Do you know anything?" "I don't know. Maybe she had a fight with a friend through a text." My husband's suggestion seemed plausible. We had given her a smartphone as a gift for entering middle school, and she was really happy, frequently talking with her friends. Besides, she was already 13 years old, likely facing various teenage problems. There are things she might not want to tell her parents. While I was concerned, I decided to wait until Evelyn opened up herself. However, contrary to my hopes, the situation continued to worsen. A month later, the once talkative and cheerful Evelyn became increasingly withdrawn. She hardly spoke, and the lively discussions about school events and her favorite idols ceased. I couldn't recall the last time I saw her smile. Feeling something was seriously wrong, after Evelyn went to bed, I decided to consult my husband. Evelyn has been down lately. What should I say in times like these? Teenage girls are like that, right? Maybe prying too much isn't a good idea. Let her be. Giving her space is also an act of kindness. Saying that, my husband ended the conversation and went to bed. I couldn't help but let out a deep sigh. She seemed like a completely different person, and I just couldn't leave my daughter alone. The next morning, with my husband off to work, I seized the opportunity when it was just Evelyn and me. I asked her, "Evelyn, is there something bothering you? You're not your usual self." Evelyn momentarily widened her eyes, but quickly became expressionless, saying, "It's nothing. Leave me alone," and left the house. Seeing Evelyn reject me like that, I wondered if my husband was right, and maybe it was better to leave her alone. However, as I continued to carefully observe Evelyn's behavior, I noticed something. Is she afraid of her dad? I thought it might be my imagination, but my daughter was clearly avoiding her father, displaying a frightened demeanor. While she used to respond to her father's scolding with defiance and express her opinions, lately, she seems to shrink back whenever he says something. When it looks like she might be alone with her husband, she either locks herself in her room or avoids making eye contact. Her actions were really unnatural. Something is definitely wrong. That evening, I inquired if my husband had any idea what was happening, but he shouted, "Stop nagging. It's just a rebellious phase." "I'm tired from work." I was astonished. My husband is not someone who raises his voice at me. Clearly, something is off with my husband as well. Maybe there's something between the two. Filled with such anxiety, I decided to find out what was happening at home when my husband and daughter were alone. To observe their behavior when I'm not at home, I opted to install a hidden camera. Upon a quick online research, I found that a pet camera is budget-friendly and easy on the wallet. You can monitor the video and audio on a smartphone, and even record. So, I decided to purchase one. On the next day off, I discreetly installed the pet camera in an inconspicuous location, and I lied that I had to work that day as I left the house. Stealthily hiding in the garden, I checked the footage on my smartphone. To my disbelief, I witnessed an unbelievable scene. My husband went out of his way to summon our daughter from her room to the living room, berating her for various faults, shouting, "Wash your own cup. Your table manners are filthy. You're too unfriendly. Be more pleasant." You and those colleagues at work, all incompetent and useless, getting in my way. Yet why do they keep getting promoted? It doesn't make sense. I saw a side of my husband's expression that I had never witnessed in our 15 years of marriage. His anger escalated beyond shouting. He forcefully pushed our daughter's shoulders and pounded the table with clenched fists. Startled by the noise, our daughter's shoulders twitched and her face stiffened in fear. Witnessing such a distressing scene, my chest tightened. To my further disbelief, my husband intentionally bumped into our daughter as she obediently washed the cup as instructed, causing her to fall. Overwhelmed with anger after witnessing the whole ordeal, I stormed into the house, shouting at my husband, "What are you doing?" In the midst of my anger, I rushed towards my fallen daughter. She weakly smiled, assuring me, "I'm used to it." Tears welled up in my eyes. I saw her swollen, red forehead, perhaps from when she hit her head when she fell. Used to it. To think she endured such treatment repeatedly since that day she started acting strangely. Most likely, since that day when my daughter seemed off, she had been subjected to verbal abuse and violence. I couldn't fathom how much pain, sadness, and terror she must have endured. I put myself in her shoes and blamed myself for not noticing sooner. "Sorry. I'm so sorry, Evelyn." Apologizing, I hugged my daughter tightly. "Mom, it's okay, I'm okay." While saying that, my daughter gently stroked my back. Despite being the one in the most pain, she was comforting me. My eyes welled up in tears, but I tried hard to hold them back. Then, I confronted the person responsible for treating my daughter so horribly. "Explain this. What on earth is going on?" I shouted, protecting my daughter while hiding her behind my own back. "You explain what the hell you're doing. You were supposed to be at work today." My sudden appearance left my husband speechless, and realizing the situation, he angrily shouted back. Faced with my husband's evasive responses, my anger boiled. "That's beside the point. Answer my question." Undeterred by his yelling, I confronted him with a steely gaze. Despite being cornered and taking a few steps back, my husband countered in defiance. "She's just like those idiots at work and wouldn't listen to me, so I disciplined her. I can't have her turning into someone who disrespects me like those people." My husband's fervent explanation left me speechless. "So, in essence, you were relieving workplace stress by taking it out on our daughter under the pretext of discipline." My anger reached its peak at this unbelievable revelation. Using your own daughter as an outlet for stress and deliberately knocking her down. You're a disgrace as a father. My furious expression momentarily caught my husband off guard, but he quickly started babbling. "It wasn't intentional. I just accidentally bumped into her." Accidental? How dare you tell such childish lies? What you did is a clear case of assault. I'll call the police right now. Hearing this, my husband seemed terrified at the mention of the police and faltered in his words. To drive the point home, I played the recorded video on my phone for him. "After watching this, it's evident that you intentionally bumped into her." My words were met with a resentful glare from my husband, who suddenly lunged towards my phone. Swiftly, I grabbed his collar and right sleeve, lowering my stance and executing a shoulder throw. He fell, hitting the back of his head and groaning in pain. Looking down at his pitiful state, I coldly remarked, "You should have learned some self-defense." Subsequently, I used a video footage from the pet camera as evidence in filing for divorce mediation. Although my ex-husband initially refused the divorce, when I informed him, "If you won't accept the divorce, I'll report you to the police for violating child welfare laws and have you arrested," he agreed to the divorce with a pale face. Some may criticize my leniency, but driven by the need to sever ties with this man as quickly as possible, and a final act of compassion toward a 15-year-long partner, I prioritized the divorce. In addition, considering the severity of his actions, my ex-husband was ordered to pay $30,000 in compensation. His abusive behavior towards our biological child, causing mental distress, was a significant factor in increasing the settlement. Upon learning of the situation, my in-laws, acknowledging their shared responsibility, graciously paid the entire compensation. As life gradually returned to normal, my in-laws visited us to express their apologies. They likely wanted to see their granddaughter's face as well. I checked with my daughter to see if she wanted to meet, but my in-laws have always adored her, watching her grow with affection. With no reason to resist their visit, my daughter warmly welcomed them, reuniting after a long time. The in-laws sincerely apologized to us, then requested to speak privately with my daughter. Then they informed me about my ex-husband's current situation. Unable to cope with stress at work and the added pressure of divorce, he had a meltdown at his workplace, berating his superiors and ultimately getting fired. He reportedly went on a rampage at work, berating his superiors with the question, "Why don't you give me a fair evaluation?" and ended up getting fired. Consequently, my in-laws decided to take him in, having him take over their family dairy farm. As an apprentice, he tirelessly worked with the cows every day. Every day he worked himself to exhaustion. My in-laws blamed themselves for not being able to raise their son to become a good father. They said they will drill proper behavior into him once more. After one more goodbye to my daughter, they left. Throughout this ordeal, my in-laws were supportive, and without them, I doubt the divorce would have been finalized so swiftly. My daughter was unwilling to visit her father, as I was applying for a restraining order, but my ex-husband was doing a lot of terrible things to my daughter, whining about wanting to see her. Thanks to my in-laws' intervention, visits were restricted, and they promised to monitor him to ensure he didn't attempt unauthorized visits. Because they were checking every month, child support was always paid, which was reassuring. I am truly grateful for the occasional delivery of homemade cheese and butter. Well then, I morphed to the gym again today. As I announced my departure, my daughter stopped me. "You know, maybe I should try going to the gym too," she said with a slightly embarrassed expression, surprising me. "What made you decide all of a sudden?" I asked, restraining my excitement. She smiled and said, "Because Mom looked so cool that day." Yay! Let's do it together. Can I learn some self-defense too? If you keep practicing, you'll get there. I will teach you. "Geez, Mom, you're getting too excited," she said while laughing. Overwhelmed by emotions, I tried my best to hold back tears, and together with my daughter, we headed to the gym. Since then, my daughter's bright personality came back little by little, returning to her former chatty self. From here on, I will continue to protect her smile and lead peaceful days together. I'm Amanda, a 35-year-old woman working as an executive secretary at a local company. I met Matthew, my same-age husband, who worked as a salesman in my FIL's company during our college days in a tennis club, and we got married. We live with my in-laws and Matthew's younger sister, Iris, who is 10 years younger than us. My in-laws are a prominent family in the area. My Phil runs a major construction company, and my Mill is a city councilwoman. Many relatives are politicians, business executives, or government officials, a truly distinguished family. My own family owns some land, so I was aware of being raised in a wealthy home. However, the scale of my in-laws' wealth was something else. I felt quite intimidated when I first visited their house. They have several live-in housekeepers, a separate living space where Matthew's late grandparents lived, and even a storage house. Matthew always seemed a bit out of touch with the real world, and I understood why after learning about his background. I remember when he was a freshman in our tennis club, he was sent to the supermarket with the seniors, and he was shocked to find that cup noodles were sold for about $1. He thought they cost around $5. He had never experienced shopping with a budget before, and I vividly remember his puzzled look as I shopped within the budget given by the seniors. What drew me to him was his kindness. He never spoke ill of others, didn't join in when someone was being teased, and even when urged by others, he'd say, "No, I'm not interested." What's fun about teasing someone? Let's do something more enjoyable, freeing the person being teased. After several such instances, I mustered the courage to confess to him after a get-together, and that's how our relationship began. When we decided to get married, I thought I could build a warm family with someone as kind as him. His parents, both busy business people, seemed not to pay much attention to us. My Mill said, "Let's live without interfering with each other, maintaining a comfortable distance," which made me believe my married life would be happy. However, that happiness never came. The root of all this was his 10 years younger sister, Iris. She spent more time with Matthew than with her busy parents from a young age. When I first visited my in-law's house, she glared at me and said, "I haven't spent much time together with my parents, but Matthew has always been by my side." I won't allow an outsider like you to enter our family. The in-laws scolded her for being rude, but she retorted, "You always don't care about me anyway," and ran out crying. Matthew didn't scold her, just saying, "Iris is just lonely," which frustrated me. I felt uneasy about her attitude as our wedding day approached, and even after moving into the in-laws' house. Her dislike for me manifested in various harassments. She constantly tried to separate me from Matthew, intruding on our conversations in the living room as a routine. When we discussed important matters like life plans or family planning and asked her to wait, she'd throw a tantrum, claiming we were excluding her. But Matthew didn't reprimand her for such behavior, saying, "Iris is just lonely, she's so cute." She then claimed it was her right as a sister to monopolize her brother, even following us on outings meant for just the two of us, and he accepted her presence as if it were natural. I initially tried to get along with her, talking and giving small gifts, but she ignored me, so I eventually gave up. "I'd like to go out just the two of us. We should invite Iris too. It would be more fun." How many times did we have such exchanges? No matter how much I expressed my hurt over being ignored, my concerns were dismissed as mere imagination. That would have been better than the reality. She harassed me by hiding or throwing away my belongings and even claimed my damaged items as hers on social media, playing the victim. She posted unflattering photos of me, leading to strangers and acquaintances criticizing me as the mean cell. Despite my protests, she demeaned me, saying, "This is my house, I can do what I want. You're just a poor thing living off Matthew's money." Despite the housekeepers being instructed to ignore my commands, their reports to my in-laws about her behavior led to her being scolded several times. But she would just get upset, saying, "Don't you love me, Mom and Dad?" She told Matthew that she is bullied by everyone, and Matthew would say, "They have to be nice to you, you're my dear little sister," taking her side no matter how much I argued. I was filled with helpless frustration. Adding to my woes, Matthew indulged her demands for expensive trips and branded items, spending extravagantly, causing me distress. This lifestyle brought me immense stress, leading to physical symptoms like headaches and stomach aches. We were trying to conceive, but the doctor warned that this stress could affect our efforts. The root of my stress is Iris. If something isn't done about her behavior, we might never have a baby. Matthew, who was eager for children, seemed shocked when I relayed the doctor's words, but he still sided with Iris. "Her behavior is stressful. Maybe it's just the way you're perceiving things," he said, as usual, taking her side. However, a turning point came in our lives. Iris graduated from college and got engaged. Her fiancé was the son of the CEO of a company that had business dealings with my FIL's company. Iris accepted the proposal, saying she would dedicate herself to being a homemaker. After Iris left, my health improved significantly, and I thought it was only a matter of time before I would become pregnant. However, no signs of pregnancy appeared. A visit to the gynecologist revealed that I had some difficulties conceiving. Matthew was initially shocked but encouraged me to stay positive. His kindness reminded me that he could be a good man, just not when it came to Iris. Despite following the doctor's advice on diet and lifestyle, and undergoing treatments, I still struggled to conceive. Gradually, Matthew's attitude cooled, and he started to press me, "When will you get pregnant? You don't want to get pregnant, do you? That's why it's not happening." That's not true. I want to have our child. Seeing pregnant women or families with children always brought me to tears, wondering why I couldn't have that. 2 years later, Iris became pregnant first. Matthew, without knowing the gender of the baby, began buying expensive baby gear and maternity items for her. He even took time off work to accompany her to maternity photo shoots and checkups. He started pressuring me more, saying, "Iris could get pregnant. Why can't you?" I was too drained to argue back. Iris chose to return to her parents' home to give birth. She called me defective as a woman and told me to get a divorce. It only worsened my condition. This situation deteriorated to the point where I had to take leave from work. Iris gave birth safely but was immediately divorced. That was because her affair. She had been having an affair with a man she met at a cafe, and the child's father was actually him. It turned out she got pregnant when her husband was away on a long business trip. A paternity test confirmed her child wasn't her husband's, leading to an immediate divorce and her return to her parents' house. My in-laws were furious. Because Iris's ex-husband was the son of the CEO of a company that had business dealings with my FIL's company. This scandal resulted in the cancellation of a major business deal and a significant loss. Mil's political career was jeopardized as she lost support from her backers because of the scandal. Iris had to have her parents cover the alimony for their straining relations. My in-laws confronted her, saying, "Once trust is lost, it's hard to regain. How are you going to make this right? It's his fault for being such a boring man," she retorted, insisting that they should adore their first grandchild. My in-laws instructed her to work and contribute to expenses, but Matthew opposed, claiming he would support Iris. Iris's ex-husband was not good enough. That's why Iris couldn't fully commit to him. "I'll take care of Iris's living expenses," he declared firmly. My in-laws and I were against it, and Michael threatened to kick her out if Matthew took care of Iris's living expenses, so he reluctantly gave up. Initially, Iris looked for a job but gradually stopped job searching and skipped job interviews. She neglected her child, leaving the care to the housekeepers. Matthew didn't give her money directly but bought her meals, clothes, and jewelry. And she sold those items for living expenses, contributing to the household. I tried to tell my in-laws, but they were busy trying to regain their reputation. As Iris recovered from childbirth, she started going out at night, sneaking out and returning late. I was speechless at her behavior. One day, Matthew and Iris called me to the living room for a talk. "What is it?" "I'm getting remarried, so my kid's in the way." "Why don't you adopt him, since you can't have one? It'll be perfect for you. I'll let you raise it." I was stunned. A child is not a nuisance. It's selfish to push your child onto someone else just because you're remarrying. I have no intention of adopting your child. I couldn't comprehend her attitude, desperately wanting a child myself. "But it's a fact you can't get pregnant." "What?" Just as I was about to respond, Matthew interrupted. "Don't you dare defy Iris. A barren woman should keep quiet. If you resist, I'll divorce you." He threw a signed divorce form at me. I was shocked, my mind went blank. And then, I felt something inside me snap, something that had been stretched tight until now. "Well, I'm already pregnant, though." "What?" Matthew looked confused at my words. "I went to see the doctor last week, and she told me I'm pregnant. The recent sickness I've been feeling was because of the pregnancy." "Here, this is the ultrasound," I said, showing him the picture. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you really pregnant? Then why didn't you tell me sooner? I was planning to surprise you with the news on your birthday next week, so I can be a father." "No, you can't." "What do you mean? It's my child, isn't it? Why can't I be a father?" Matthew was at a loss for words, clearly not expecting my response. "You just handed me the divorce form. So, we're getting divorced." "Wait, please. That was just a slip of the tongue." "No way. You can take care of Iris's child if you wish. We can raise both Iris's child and ours together. That should solve the problem, right?" "Absolutely not. Maybe it's fine while Iris's child is too young to understand, but imagine how hurt he'd be knowing he was abandoned by his mother. And abandoning parental responsibility is unthinkable." I was furious at his rash words and retorted sharply, ignoring his persistence. "Just don't tell to the child about it." I turned to Iris, who was nonchalantly playing with her phone, and confronted her. "What kind of nerve do you have to put your child up for adoption just because you're getting remarried? You should be responsible for him as his mother. Don't be so mad. I just want to have a child with him, so this one's in the way. If I found someone to take him, I'm taking my responsibility as a mother, right?" I reached my boiling point with Iris's self-centered remarks. "Stop joking around. You're unfit to be a mother. Have you ever considered how your child would feel being abandoned by his mother? You're heartless." Iris was frightened and tearful. And then I coldly declared to Matthew, "I have no intention of raising a child with someone who treats their child like an object. We are getting divorced. I'm leaving today. Please don't leave. It's our long-awaited child. Let me be a father." He pleaded with tears, but I was adamant, "No joke. I no longer want to be married to a jerk like you. Goodbye." And with that, I left the living room. "I won't allow you to leave." Matthew pleaded with me not to leave, but Iris clung to his pants, crying, "Where are you going, Matthew? I don't want to be alone." As he tried to shake her off, he lost his balance and fell. Matthew called out to me, but I ignored him. After explaining the situation to my in-laws when they returned home, they apologized profusely and promised to pay alimony and child support. Later, we got divorced. My in-laws brought me additional compensation, apologizing for their children's behavior. They informed me that Iris and Matthew have been kicked out of the house, and the baby was being taken care of by them. They even legally adopted the child. Furthermore, Iris's remarriage was called off once her fiancé learned about the situation. After I left, my in-laws, having seen Matthew and Iris blame each other and treating their child like an object, declared they wanted nothing to do with them and kicked them out on the spot. They now live in a nearby apartment, but Matthew has spent all his savings catering to Iris's whims, and she controls all his income, leading him to a life without freedom. Neither of them has ever done household chores, so their apartment is a mess. Their apartment is so dirty it emits a foul smell, drawing complaints from neighbors and a notice to vacate from the landlord. It's only a matter of time before they're kicked out. Recently, I saw Matthew at a supermarket, looking haggard and worn out. It seems he's burdened with a tough sales job and household chores. And Iris started working to pay off the alimony her parents covered for her ex-husband and for breaking off her recent engagement. With no prior work experience, Iris couldn't find a high-paying job and is juggling part-time jobs. I heard from a friend living nearby that Iris is always irritated due to stress at work and often fights loudly with Matthew, their voices carrying outside. But she's staying with Matthew because she can't make it on her own. I don't feel sorry for them at all. Iris, who had always been spoiled, and Matthew, who had spoiled her, are just paying for their past actions now. I, on the other hand, returned to my parents' home and safely gave birth to a baby girl. I'm now busy with first-time motherhood, supported by my parents, and planning to return to work once I'm ready. I'm looking forward to a peaceful life as a mother, watching my child grow. Oh, don't introduce me. This is my girlfriend, Emma. A smiling Kai said so, and the woman next to him greeted me. Nice to meet you, girlfriend. I stammered in disbelief. Without a care in the world, Kai continued, oh, I guess I didn't mention it yet. Emma and I are getting married. So, I want a divorce. What? My jaw dropped in shock. Kai, completely unfazed by my reaction, continued talking. You know, I realized my mom and the others were right. Without parents around, you can't even do housework properly, and you end up poor and pathetic. At first, I thought I could rely on you since you're older, but when I think about it calmly, it's getting tough with an older woman. LOL. Emma is young, she's 23. A new house and a new woman would be nice, after all. Hey. Yeah, Emma nodded in agreement. And besides, it's not like the accident was a big deal, right? I can't stay married to someone who slacks off on household chores just because of a little broken bone. We'll take the house, by the way. I was too stunned by his outrageous statements to even get angry. When someone says something so far beyond common sense, it's hard to find the words to respond. I took a deep breath and handed them a signed divorce paper. Okay. Here's the divorce papers. So, you're prepared, Kai said, delighted. Leaving the two of them to celebrate, I immediately started preparing to leave. As I packed my things, Kai called out to me. You don't have a place to go, right? You can rent an apartment in front of the station for $200. It's a little shabby, and the walls are cracked, but still. Kai, you're terrible, Emma said with a laugh. The two of them laugh foolishly as they say so. Without saying anything, I forcefully closed the front door. They can keep laughing all they want. I have a place to go. It was a place that Kai and Emma could never have expected. My name is Ava. I'm turning 40 this year. I married Kai, who is 35 years old, 3 years ago. We don't have any children, and we live together in my own home that I bought during my single days. It's a used house, but I've renovated it, so it's quite a nice place. You might wonder why I bought a house before getting married. My family was poor. It's because my father wasn't there. To be precise, he disappeared before I was old enough to remember. We never knew where he went, and I grew up with just my mother. She showered me with love, but being a single mother was tough. Still, having my mother was enough for me. But when I was in high school, my mother passed away due to illness. It was a shock. However, I didn't have the luxury to grieve leisurely. I had to live on my own from then on. So, after graduating from high school, I got a job at a small local advertising agency. I worked tirelessly as a salesperson. That was how it was when I passed 30 years of age. At that time, I was so engrossed in my work that I vaguely thought I probably won't get married. If that's the case, at least I wanted my own castle. That's how I saved up money and purchased a cheap used house. I took out a loan, but I've already paid it off after making several extra payments. Around that time, I met Kai. Kai was someone from a company that was our client. I thought Kai, who was 5 years younger, seemed a bit unreliable, but he seemed to be impressed by how diligently I worked. Kai asked for my contact information, and we started hanging out frequently. I was surprised, but I also felt happy when I remembered it. I have lived all my life with no family and just work, and there has never been anyone who has clearly told me that they love me. I accepted Kai, and we began dating. And we got married soon after. At first, Kai's parents were very reluctant to marry me. I was older than him, and I didn't have parents. But Kai defended me. Even without parents, Ava works diligently. Don't say such things, he firmly told his parents. I was genuinely happy. I thought it was a good thing that I married Kai. I believed I could make it work with him. That's what I thought. Kai's change began less than 6 months after we started living together. It happened one night. When Kai came home from work, he immediately sat down at the dining table. For tonight's dinner, I made meat and potato stew, salad, and miso soup with eggplant. After a few bites, Kai put down his chopsticks. What's wrong? Well, I've been meaning to say this for a while. Kai sighed as he spoke. This miso soup, it's the one you made in the morning, right? I don't like it when it feels like leftovers. Can you make a fresh one for dinner? But it takes time. I have a job too, and I won't make it in time. Sorry, but that sounds like an excuse. In my family, we always had different miso soup for breakfast and dinner, and my mom made it from scratch, you know. Also, the side dishes are too few. I'd like at least 5 side dishes. I was perplexed by this sudden request. According to Kai, he had been thinking this for a while but didn't say anything. Certainly, I'm not a culinary expert, but I can't go to such lengths while working a full-time job. Your mom is a housewife, right? I work too, and I can't cook that much. Don't make excuses. You're a wife, so it's only natural. You have to do that much. Kai's stubbornness reminded me of a traditional, old-fashioned father from the old era, and it left me feeling frustrated. But I decided to swallow my words because I didn't want to escalate the argument any further. I had grievances, but I wanted to avoid any more conflicts. After that, I tried my best to finish work on time and rushed home to cook dinner. However, Kai's behavior continued to escalate. Are you using cheap meat for this? Aren't these side dishes the same as yesterday's? You should have at least a week between repeating the same dish. Each time, I accommodated his demands, and it started to make meal preparation overwhelming. Before I knew it, I was thinking about meals all day, and I was constantly rushing around. Kai's complaints extended beyond just the food. He even checked for dust in every nook and cranny of the house, and criticized me for not cleaning properly. I do regular cleaning, but it still wasn't enough for him. Stop complaining so much. If you noticed it, why don't you do it yourself? Fed up with his constant nagging, I retorted, and Kai responded with hurtful words. What are you talking about? Housework is not my job, right? Don't pass the responsibility on to me. I hate to say this, but I guess a person without parents around can't even do decent housework. I was shocked by his words. He wasn't the kind of person to insult me by saying that I didn't have parents. Is this the real Kai now, and was the Kai I saw back then just an illusion? I didn't care about that anymore. I just wanted the old Kai back. My wish was in vain, and the situation only got worse. I was completely exhausted by Kai's relentless demands for household chores. It would be tough to balance work and this. With Kai's suggestion, I decided to quit my job. It was a job I had loved since high school graduation, but there was no other choice. Looking back, maybe I should have ended things at this point. But I had always put my job first and hardly ever dated, and I didn't know what a normal family was like. Meeting Kai's demands seemed like my duty as a housewife. I thought that if I could endure it a little, I could maintain a peaceful home. Besides, becoming a full-time housewife gave me much more time for household chores. Kai's complaints decreased, and I was genuinely relieved. I thought the problem was solved, but one day, on a holiday evening, Kai went out. He said he was going to visit a friend who had just built a new house. He came back that night, smelling of alcohol. He must have had quite a few drinks. He was unusually talkative. "Man, that friend's house is so spacious and beautiful. The furniture and stuff are designed by famous designers, so it's really stylish. And all the appliances are high-end, so they look great." "Oh, really?" I nodded casually and offered Kai some water. "On the other hand, this house is a bit second-hand." Saying that, Kai drank the water and looked around the room. Then he seemed to want to say something to me. "I wish we could at least replace the cheap furniture." Cheap furniture. Certainly, the furniture and appliances I had been using since I was single were not expensive, but they were only a few years old and still in good condition. They weren't top of the line, but they weren't so cheap as to be called that. And when Kai moved in here, didn't he say, "Let's just keep using the furniture and appliances as they are"? I pointed that out, but Kai replied without any remorse, "Well, but when you actually live here, new furniture would be better. But it's a waste to replace it because it still works." When I gently said that, Kohei suddenly made a face as if he was mocking me. Sigh. "Your attitude is so stingy, you know. I guess the penny-pinching nature is deeply ingrained in you." Then, why would you say that? Anyway, I quit my job too, so we don't have that much money. You quit your job on your own, didn't you? Huh. But you. Sure, blame it on me again. With that, Kai muttered and went into the bedroom unsteadily. What a terrible thing to say. I felt anger welling up inside me, but I attributed it to him being drunk. He's just acting all big because he had some alcohol, don't let it bother you. However, even when sober, Kai's attitude continued to deteriorate. Our conversations turned into arguments, and he complained about me whenever he opened his mouth. What on earth had happened to him? And without consulting me, Kai went ahead and bought new furniture. He even seemed to have bought new golf equipment, his favorite hobby. He looked at the golf clubs with satisfaction. Kai was a salaryman, but his salary wasn't particularly high. He probably took out a loan, but now that I couldn't work, I was worried about the repayments. Anxiety swelled up inside me. At such a time, an unexpected incident occurred. I was heading to the supermarket as usual to buy ingredients for dinner. As I walked along the road, suddenly, a loud horn honked behind me. Right after that, my body was hit by a strong impact. And then, my consciousness was swallowed by darkness. When I woke up, I saw an unfamiliar ceiling. Apparently, it seems like I'm asleep. My body hurts all over, and I can't move. What happened to me? "Oh, Ms. Ava, are you awake?" An elderly woman nearby called out to me. "Where am I?" "You're in the hospital. You were brought here after a car accident." "What, an accident?" I remember leaving the house, but I have no memory of what happened after that. I tried to move my head. An impersonal bed, connected four, and a woman in a nurse uniform. Is this really a hospital? When I looked out the window, it was already dark outside. I left around 2 o'clock, but a considerable amount of time seems to have passed. Afterward, a doctor came and briefly explained the situation. It seems I was hit by a car while on my way to the supermarket. There's no life-threatening condition, but I have a few fractures, and it seems I'll need to stay in the hospital for a while. I never thought I'd be in a car accident. After receiving an explanation about my hospitalization, a nurse spoke up. "We contacted your husband." With an awkward expression, I had a bad feeling. I immediately called Kai. "Hello, Kai." Kai, who answered the phone, seemed annoyed. "Oh, Ava. I just got a call from the hospital. You had an accident, huh? You're such a klutz. Hurry up and come home and make dinner." What? I'm going to be hospitalized from now on. I couldn't understand what he was saying. In response to my reply, Kai shouted back, "Then who's going to do the housework?" "What's that? Is housework more important than me?" Unbelievable. Worrying more about housework than his wife's health. Anger bubbled up later, and we ended up arguing for a while. There's no point in arguing for there. I hung up the phone while feeling irritated. Kai has been using harsh words lately, but even so, I never thought he could be this cold. I had been angry all day, and my body was hurting, making it difficult to sleep. Nevertheless, after a few days, my strength gradually returned. As a result, I had to undergo rehabilitation. At first, it was tough to move my body since I had been bedridden for a while, but I started to enjoy it as I got used to it. Lying in bed made me think about various things, so rehabilitation was a nice change of pace. However, Kai hasn't contacted me since then. I thought talking to him would only make me more angry, so I ignored him too. It was around that time. There was an elderly man I occasionally passed by in the hallway. He dressed neatly, so he wasn't a patient. I didn't pay much attention at first, thinking he might be a visitor, but it seemed like he was looking at me. I wondered what it was, and one day, the man approached me. "Are you Mrs. Ava?" "Yes, but who are you?" I answered cautiously. I didn't know at that time that this man would set my fate in motion. Afterward, I ended up spending about a month in the hospital and finally got discharged. I'm not completely healed yet, but they said I'll be fine with regular checkups. I can finally go home. My home, after a month, feels somewhat nostalgic. But that feeling was short-lived. The moment I opened the front door, I noticed something was off right away. There were unfamiliar shoes. They had flashy pink ribbons and heels. No way. I hurriedly entered the living room, and the inside of the house had changed a lot. Not only the furniture but also the appliances were different, all brand new high-end models. Furthermore, even the curtains had changed, making it feel like a completely different person's house. "To Ava, you're back," Kai, who came out from the back, said nonchalantly. There was a young woman next to him. With chestnut hair and wearing revealing clothes, the woman said lazily, "Welcome home, Ka." "Who is she?" I was stunned, and Kai showed a smile. "Oh, let me introduce you. She's my girlfriend, Emma. Nice to meet you." "Girlfriend? Oh, I guess I hadn't mentioned it yet. I'm going to marry Emma. So, I want a divorce from you." "What?" I couldn't close my open mouth. Kai continued talking incessantly. "You know, I realized my mom and the others were right. Without parents around, you can't even do housework properly, and you end up poor and pathetic. At first, I thought I could rely on you since you're older, but when I think about it calmly, it's getting tough with an older woman. LOL. Emma is young, she's 23. A new house and a new woman would be nice, after all. Yeah. Emma tilted her head and nodded in agreement. Besides, getting into a little accident is not a big deal, right? Divorcing someone who slacks off on housework just because of some fractures, LOL. We'll take the house too, LOL. I was too shocked to even get angry at such a ridiculous statement. Don't misunderstand. We're planning to buy a new house eventually, but this one is just a temporary place until we do. When someone says something so beyond reason, you lose the will to have a conversation. The old Kai is no longer here. What's here is not a human, but an uncommunicative monster. I shouldn't argue on the same level. I took a deep breath and said, "Okay. Here's the divorce papers. To, you're ready." I had already signed the divorce papers in advance. Given the recent tense atmosphere between us, I had prepared for this choice sooner or later. Leaving the two of them alone, I quickly packed my belongings. I had to prepare to leave the house. As I was busy with my preparations, Kai called out to me. "You don't have a place to go, right? You can rent an apartment in front of the station for $200. It's a little shabby, and the walls are cracked, but still." "Kai, you're so mean, LOL. The two of them laugh foolishly as they say so. Without saying anything, I forcefully closed the front door. I glanced back for a moment and looked at the house. My castle, which I had worked so hard to buy. Today would be the last day I'd see it. However, there were no regrets. I have a place to go. A week later, I was relaxing in my new home when suddenly the doorbell rang loudly. I checked the monitor, and it was Kai and Emma. Ignoring them, the two of them kept calling my name. Seeing their frantic behavior, I couldn't help but laugh. After observing them for a while, I spoke to them through the intercom. What do you want? Why are you living in such a mansion? Yes, Kai referred to my current house as a mansion. It is a 3-story reinforced concrete house on a lot of no less than 300 square meters, and it also has a swimming pool in the garden. I didn't expect you to come all the way here to say that. No, we have a proposal. Please open up, we want to talk. It's probably a pointless conversation anyway. No, it's important. To the persistent Kai, I said, this is the last time, and opened the front door. Then I let the two of them into the living room. I had contacted Kai a few times about changing the ownership of the house, but I hadn't told him where I was living. I wondered how he had found out, and it seemed like Kai had been following me around town by chance. He was shocked when he saw me entering this mansion. And Kai and Emma had come up with an audacious plan together. Kai began to speak. Hey, isn't it suspicious that a poor woman like you can live in a mansion like this? It's because you're doing some shady business, right? Huh? Why would you think that? Kai, who started with an incomprehensible statement, left me dumbfounded. I saw it with my own eyes. You were with an old man, and you entered this house. Confidently, Kai talked. You know, I get it. You don't want to admit it, right? You're poor, so you have no choice but to make money that way, right? But hey, if you have such a big client, I want you to introduce Emma too. I work at a hostess club, so I'm good at charming old men, lol. I can definitely make more money than Ava, lol. Saying that, Emma laughed too. I said nonchalantly, what are you both talking about? The person I was with was probably my father. This house is also my father's house. What? Don't lie. You don't have any parents, do you? Kai's voice grew louder and more agitated, and the door to the living room opened. What's all this noise about? Seeing the elderly man who came out, I called out to him. Dad. Huh? Dad. Kai was surprised, and my father greeted me by sitting next to me. Go, Kai, right. You used to be taken care of by my daughter. Nice to meet you. I'm Ava's father, Bob. Huh? What's going on? Kai looked back and forth between me and my father with wide eyes. It was understandable. I had only recently reunited with my father during my hospitalization. Yes, the elderly man who had talked to me back then was my father. My father was supposed to have gone missing. I had heard that from my mother, so I thought it might be a mistake. However, as I talked to this man, I realized that he was indeed my real father. My father had gone to the United States to start a business. After some time, his business took off, and he had planned to bring us over. But he was robbed and left with nothing. Not only was all of his business capital taken, but he also lost contact with us. My father was at a loss, but thanks to the help of a man he had met during that time, he ended up working at the man's company. He started with odd jobs and gradually climbed the ranks, eventually becoming the right-hand man of the company's president. Later, with the man's assistance, he became independent. His business succeeded, and my father achieved social success. But most of all, he was concerned about us, his wife and child. Partly because he was too busy and had not had a chance to return home, but also because he felt guilty about having neglected us for so long, and found it difficult to see us. During this time, my father's company decided to start new business in Japan. My father hesitated, but he finally decided to return. He built a house here and set out to find me and my mother. At that time, he learned that my mother had passed away. My father was filled with deep regret upon hearing the news. He wished he had returned sooner. My father had desperately wanted to see me as soon as possible, and had come to the hospital. And once I learned the truth, I ended up living in this mansion owned by my father. I summarized all of this as I spoke. By the way, my father had also investigated Kai's affair. After playing golf with his colleagues and occasionally using hostess clubs, it seemed that Kai had met Emma there. So, this is my family's home. Got it. Oh no, I didn't hear about rich dads suddenly showing up. Kai muttered weakly. But, if you have that much money, would you come to the shop where I work? Emma tried to hand her business card to my father immediately. As expected of the woman Kai chose, she was incredibly audacious. My father immediately waved her away. I'm sorry, but I don't go to cheap pubs. Right. Emma is absolutely mortified. Naturally so. There is a restaurant that my father uses for business, but it is only a very high-end restaurant. It was unthinkable for Emma to visit a cheap cabaret like the one she mentioned. And besides, I don't have any money. Everything's been inherited by Ava. Huh. With stunned expressions, Kai and Emma look back and forth between us. It's about $110 million or so. I've left it untouched all this time. It's a way for me to atone for neglecting her for so long. Both of them were left speechless with their mouths open. I've heard about you guys from Ava. Especially Kai. I heard that you said many terrible things to Ava. She bought that house by saving money from her small salary. And she worked very hard to take care of the house. She had no mother, so she probably never had a chance to learn from her. But you said terrible things to Ava and trampled on her feelings. I can't forgive you, and on top of that, you had an affair while you were married to her. If you go overboard, I can sue you. Father said slowly, and Kai was taken aback. But I won't do that. Lava's hardships were partly my fault too. I spoke my mind, thinking it was the last time. You've made fun of me for being poor or not having parents. I'm so fed up with you, who lacks empathy. Don't ever come to this house again. Goodbye. The two of them sat there without saying a word, wearing frustrated expressions. Then I say coolly to the two of them, who are sitting there forever. Do you still need something? Can you leave when you're done? So, with our cold gazes, we overwhelmed them, and they left in a hurry. However, when I looked out the window, they seemed to be looking at our house with resentment and didn't leave. Seeing this, my father opened the door to the doghouse in the yard. Two fierce Dobermans came rushing out. Yikes. Whoa. Help. Kai and Emma screamed as they fled. Watching their reactions, my father and I couldn't help but laugh. It had been a while since I had laughed so much. With this, I don't think we'll ever see those two again. I can finally enjoy peaceful days. I felt relieved from the bottom of my heart. Later, I learned that the fate of the two of them was tragic. Kai and Emma, who continued to live in that house, were hit by a typhoon in the area. It brought heavy rain, causing nearby rivers to overflow, and houses all around were flooded. Fortunately, my area remained unscathed, but it seemed that their house suffered considerable damage. Although the two of them escaped, Kai's prized luxury furniture and brand new golf equipment, as well as Emma's designer items, were all submerged. Not only that, but the house's pillars had rotted due to prolonged exposure to water. Two people who lost their place to live seem to have been living in a shelter for a while. Kai's hometown is far away, and he can't go back there. Emma's hometown was even worse. Emma's parents were unemployed and addicted to gambling, living in a small apartment on welfare. It seems like Kai kept this a secret from Emma and pretended to be a gentleman. Emma herself was working at a cabaret club but was spending money recklessly and was broke. Kai was also in debt because he kept buying expensive furniture and golf equipment. Pai, who had been surviving through life by having women pay for him, was finally in trouble. With nowhere to go, the two of them reluctantly ended up living in a rundown apartment near the station, which cost $200 in rent. They had often ridiculed such places, so it was quite a comedic twist that Kai and Emma were now living there. What goes around comes around. Unless they sincerely reflect on their actions, they won't find peace in their days. On the other hand, I had resigned from my previous job and was planning to look for a new one. When I mentioned it to my father, I was able to join his company. The job is in the same field of sales, and it's fulfilling. There's still much to learn, but I'm putting in effort every day to become a valuable team member. At my father's mansion, there are often home parties with people from work. My experience in sales comes in handy during such times, and I can easily chat with anyone without barriers. I'm also considering working overseas in the future, so I won't neglect my English studies. My father often says, "Your face looks more lively than when we reunited." It's hard to believe that not too long ago, I was living with Kai, and I was irritated every day. You never know what life will bring. Even in tough times, they won't last forever. Plus, as long as you keep moving forward, there will always be someone watching over you. I believe in that, and I want to continue living brightly from now on. Then I'm backing off. That's what Theo said as he thrust the divorce papers at me after I told him our son had pediatric cancer. I had fought, surely, learning his son had cancer would change his heart. I believed he would say, let's fight this together. My hopes were shattered. Theo left the next day, leaving me stunned. 10 years later, Theo suddenly reappeared before me. His reaction upon learning about my current situation was, I am Genesis, 35 years old. I married Theo when I was 23. I met Theo on a mixer thrown by a friend. I was nervous at my first mixer, but Theo spoke to me proactively and we had a good time. I thought it would end with just that day, but he asked for my contact information, and we later met just the two of us. When we met privately, Theo chatted with me a lot, and we had a lot of fun. After several dates, we started dating. Being only 23, I wasn't thinking of marriage yet, but Theo was keen on getting married soon. And in fact, he proposed about 6 months into our relationship. I thought it was a bit early to get married after dating for just 6 months, but I enjoyed my time with Theo. He was kind and made me think I could have a happy married life with him, so I agreed. Despite concerns from others, we somewhat forcefully went ahead with the marriage. And soon after, I regretted that decision. Theo, I'm leaving, so please soak the dishes in the sink after you eat. I told him one day, but when I returned home, the dishes were left as is. Even at dinner, he said, oh, is it fish today? I was in the mood for meat. I'm tired from work, don't you think you should give me some stamina? He was always complaining. He seemed to take it for granted that I would do the household chores, demanding daily, Genesis, why haven't you ironed my shirts? A big perk of marriage is wearing crisply ironed shirts to work every day. Looking back, I should have protested more against Theo's attitude, as we both were working. But being young, I thought that's how it should be. Soon after our marriage, we had a child. That was our son, Weston. Pregnancy was tough. Theo continued to expect housework from me, even during my morning sickness phase. Hey, I'm having a hard time with morning sickness. Just stir-frying or something makes me sick, even if I'm not eating. Will you cook until my morning sickness subsides? But he refused, saying, what's the point of being married if I have to cook? I don't get why you feel sick from cooking. Just wear a mask. You can make porridge or something for yourself. So I endured the nausea and did the housework daily. The hardship seemed worth it the moment Weston was born. He was so adorable, and I felt I could do anything for him. However, the happiness was short-lived. Raising a baby for the first time was hard. I couldn't sleep through the day. There were feedings every 3 hours, and it was often hard to get a full 3 hours of sleep. And of course there are times when I don't know why he is crying. Struggling with first-time parenting and visibly exhausted, Theo didn't lift a finger to help. On the contrary, he said, hurry up and stop him from crying. It's too noisy. You're not a good mother if you don't know why he's crying. My boss at work said that mothers can usually tell why a child is crying by the way he cries. I started losing confidence as a mother, hearing such things. At this time, I also asked Theo to help me with housework and childcare, but he said, housework and childcare are women's work. Do you know why I got married? How many times do I have to tell you? And if it were a girl, I would have loved her even more. As he grows up, he will become completely unattractive, and I hate just imagining his rebellious period. If he rebels against me, I'll kick him out of the house. He said that and didn't pay any attention to me at all. No matter what I said, Theo's stance was always, housework and childcare are women's jobs, and I'm the one earning more. Indeed, Theo had a higher income, but that was because he did none of the housework, forcing me to reduce my working hours. If I worked full-time, I'd earn more than him. Despite this, Theo always bragged about his income. It saddened me deeply that Theo wouldn't help with housework or childcare. But even more heartbreaking was his lack of love for our beloved son, Weston. I often found myself crying outside while calming a crying Weston in a baby carrier. These days continued, and Weston turned 4. Weston would talk excitedly about his day at preschool and started saying I love you, Mom, every day. Still, Theo remained indifferent to him. Often, when Weston called him Dad, Theo would ignore him, which was heartbreaking to see. Around this time, I suspected Theo was having an affair. It's a common tale, sudden increases in overtime and weekend work. In addition, he would sometimes be away from home for 2 or 3 days, saying he had a business trip that he had not had to take before as well. Even when I confronted Theo about possibly having an affair, he, of course, denied it. I was just thinking that one of these days I would have to hire a professional detective or a private investigator to find out what was going on. But before I could, Weston's health began to deteriorate. Weston frequently fell ill, with fevers and colds. I was too preoccupied with his health to pursue Theo's suspected infidelity. I was overwhelmed with farts about Weston. Theo, of course, never helped with the caregiving. Instead, he'd say, "I don't want to catch his cold, I'll stay at my parents' place," and leave. "You're probably off to see another woman." In my heart, I fought, but my situation didn't allow me to dwell on it. Weston's health issues continued after that. At that time, Weston was 5 years old. The hospital decided to conduct thorough examinations as something seemed off. Dr. Oliver called me to tell me that the test results were in, and asked me to come talk to him with parents if possible. So I asked Theo to come with me, but he did not come with me this time either, saying it was too much trouble. I had no choice but to go to the hospital alone to hear the news. The news from Dr. Oliver hit me like a hammer blow. Weston had pediatric cancer. Everything went dark before my eyes. Why Weston? I was overwhelmed, collapsing on the spot. Dr. Oliver helped me up and calmed me down. Dr. Oliver was the one who spoke to me then. "Weston will start treatment now. It will be hard for you, but if you look sad, it will make it harder for him." That woke me up. Right, there's no use in being down. I had to be strong for Weston. I went home and told Theo about Weston's cancer. I thought surely Theo would change his heart, knowing his son had pediatric cancer. "Let's get through this together," he said to me. But my hopes were crushed. Theo pondered for a moment and then said, "Then I'm backing off," and he slammed the divorce papers in front of me. I couldn't comprehend what was happening before my eyes. What do you mean?" That was all I could muster. When I heard that the hospital asked for both parents to come, I figured something serious had happened. Like some big illness or something. It was as I expected. To be honest, I was already thinking of divorcing you. Since we got married, you've been nagging me to do housework and participate in childcare. I didn't divorce you because of the kid and what people would think. Now that he has cancer, there is no use in getting treatment for it. If the kid is going to die anyway, I thought, what's the point? Theo said this unbelievable thing in a matter-of-fact manner. He left the divorce papers with me, saying, "Sign your part and submit it," and briskly walked to the bedroom. I was frozen in place for hours, unable to move, staring at the divorce papers. I could tolerate his lack of help with housework and childcare before, but this was too much. But now, I wondered, could I really raise Weston alone while he battles cancer? My parents live far away and are still working, so I can't rely on them. I'll have to work and support Weston through his treatment. Overwhelmed with anxiety, I couldn't stop my tears. The thought of losing Weston made me doubt my ability to go on. As I was engulfed in these farts, "Weston, you should have been asleep," came out. I quickly wiped my tears. "Weston, what's wrong? Need to use the bathroom." Weston came to my side as I said. Then, "Mom, what's wrong? Did something sad happen? Did you catch a cold?" "I'm sorry, I always catch a cold. I'll take care of you this time." He said it gently to me. Trying not to worry him, I wiped my tears, but they wouldn't stop as I hugged him. That's right, I have to be strong. I decided to protect Weston. I reaffirmed my resolve. The next day, Theo packed his things and left without saying goodbye to us. Then, 10 years passed. I was shopping at the mall when I heard, "Finally found you." Turning around, there was Theo. It was no surprise that he was older than he was 10 years ago, but he looked somewhat gaunt, and the clothes he was wearing were shabby. As I stood there in shock, Theo continued jarking. "I've been looking for you. You moved and don't use social media. I asked friends and heard you might live around here, so I've been coming to this store." "What do you want now?" I asked. Theo said, "I'm your ex-husband, so why are you treating me like a stranger? You're still alone anyway, aren't you? I don't think anyone would marry a grump like you, and you must be lonely now that you don't have a kid anymore. Let's start over again." You're only 35 years old, so you can still have another baby. He continued to blabber on and on. Theo had remarried in the last 10 years, but had no children, and divorced again. He smirked. It's sad to be alone in old age, right? Now understanding the situation, I replied, I've already had a second child, so I'm fine. And I'm not lonely at all. Theo looked baffled. Then a voice called out, Mom. There stood Weston, my younger son, and my current husband. Theo turned around, stunned. Weston, you're alive. Weston froze at the sight of Theo, too. I guided Weston behind me and faced Theo. Weston is now 15 years old, and this is our 7-year-old son and my current husband. Theo murmured, You remarried, and glared at Oliver. Who is this guy? He can't be much of a man. My husband, quickly grasping the situation, introduced himself to Theo. Nice to meet you. My name is Oliver, and I am Genesis' current husband. I was Weston's doctor, so have you at least heard about me? Or have you never heard of me at all because you never cared about your family at all? That's right, I had remarried Dr. Oliver, Weston's doctor. He had always been compassionate towards Weston and supportive of me, even after my divorce from Theo. And he always listened to me when I was struggling alone. I had developed feelings for Dr. Oliver, but our relationship as doctor and patient's mother prevented me from confessing. However, a chance private meeting and a meal together led to our relationship, and he later proposed. Weston, who enjoyed spending time with Dr. Oliver, quickly warmed up to him, and I happily accepted the proposal. Dr. Oliver was a wonderful husband and doctor. And Theo seemed to have believed Weston had passed away, but thanks to dedicated treatment, Weston's illness was completely cured. He's now healthy and full of life. After Weston's recovery, we were blessed with a second child. Theo collapsed on the spot, saying, Married a doctor. He seemed shocked that I found happiness after our divorce. But then he looked at Weston and said, Weston, you remember me, right? I'm your real father. You want to be with your real dad, don't you? You're just accepting this situation because you have to, right? Tell the truth. Weston looked at me. And I told him, you can say what you want. Then Weston went in front of Theo and said, I hardly remember you. But I do remember that there was a man at home when I was little who did nothing and ignored me, and who always made my mother sad. I have never thought of you as my father. My father is the only father I have now. Hearing this, Theo was completely stunned and motionless. Dr. Oliver then said, Do you understand now? Tommy, Weston is my real son. If you show up again, we'll call the police. We left Theo standing there, defeated. Afterwards, I learned about Theo's situation when his parents called, asking if I would reconsider getting back with their son. The reason for Theo's remarriage and subsequent divorce was his infidelity, and now he's struggling to pay alimony. You have a good job and come from a wealthy family. Surely you can help, they said, but of course, I refused. Theo is now working multiple jobs to pay the alimony. That's no longer my concern, I said and hung up. Returning to the living room, my sons and husband looked worried, probably seeing my distressed face. Mom, what's wrong? Who was on the phone? Did something happen? They asked. I replied with a smile, No, it was just a wrong number. These days, I'm so happy it almost scares me. After all, as Theo said, I'm only 35 years old. Indeed, I am considering having another child.